Right, it is recording.
Hello.
Hello.
I am going to be drinking my brew throughout, so nobody mind.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the first video of talking about documentaries and this section of the exam, which the main bit is about spectatorship. So it's about the response, about engagement, about those kind of things.
Indeed. Just as a reminder, the difference between spectator and audience, that very different kind of category. That audiences, if you look it up in the dictionary, audiences are those people that normally are a huge gathering, aren't they? Like usually at a concert or a play, and they often kind of watch stuff, and it essentially kind of washes over them. So it's much more for entertainment. Whereas a spectator positively engages. I think that's the real difference. Positively engages with texts.
Yeah.
And that reinforcement's really important, obviously from the off.
Yeah.
We're gonna go through, give a bit of an overview of the whole film. We're going to talk about some differences between documentary and fiction as well.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a look at the first sequence and see how those thoughts measure up with yours.
Yeah. Okay. So there are the different genres that I'm not sure we need to go into too much about those because you've put a video on, haven't you? On the YouTube channel along with this, where you can have a little look at the different genres. But as an overview, there's expository, which is exposing something, found a topic that nobody seems to be aware of a certain opinion about it, and it's therefore revealed through that documentary. For example, Blackfish, which if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend it in terms of understanding what expository really means. Observational, can't even say it, is the one that is that it's kind of no interference from the crew, not necessarily interviews, questions being asked, etc. It's letting everything just play out in front of the camera. Okay. Now there is debates around that, whether or not it ends up through editing, whether it can end up being biased or not, or providing a certain opinion from the filmmakers. But again, there is examples of certain documentaries you can go and watch to kind of have that debate about. Participatory. So that's where basically similar to what we have with Nick Broomfield in terms of very much involved. Him and Michael Moore are the most famous kind of filmmakers in this kind of genre. Again, Michael Moore, you should go and see one of his films. There's loads that would be really interesting, either the one about 9/11, Fahrenheit 9/11, or Bowling for Columbine, which is about those to do with a shooting in America, which obviously is more than ever a hot topic.
Harrowing subject, but I mean that's the particular. I think that's one of his best films. Bowling for Columbine. It's just it's incredible, and as Charlotte said, it's a brilliant example of this particular mode of documentary. So it's worth kind of like making sure that you're familiar with all those different modes and seeing those good examples, which works. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we did. I've just come away from a Film A2 class, and something that we've just looked at is how Nick Broomfield from his website and Michael Moore, they're both left wing basically. And coming from that perspective of providing a voice for people who wouldn't necessarily have a voice, which is kind of the background of independent documentary, is that it's not providing a mainstream opinion, it's probably moving more towards providing a voice for those who don't have it. Yeah. Definitely.
And the last one is the performative mode, which is very much the filmmaker's own involvement again, but it's kind of the idea that you're sort of highlighting the subject and the audience's responsiveness. So I think, you both groups have seen Morgan Spurlock's Super Size Me, the clips anyway. I think, or you can do on YouTube if you haven't already. But again, it's another good one to go and watch. I mean, this is a guy basically who, his long-time partner is a vegan chef, and he has a brilliant diet normally, but decides he's really fit and healthy. Lives in Manhattan. And in Manhattan most people walk everywhere, and there's a country here that apparently they say there's more fast food restaurants, don't they, in Manhattan in that square couple of miles than there is anywhere else by area, if you like, in the world. Goes on this diet at McDonald's, doesn't he, for God knows how many days, and it's really interesting because he has all the meds done, blood's taken, all this kind of stuff. And you can visibly see kind of weight, and you can visibly see him as well, kind of reacting to that food because that's all he can eat. It's brilliantly entertaining, and I think it's very, very clever at the same time. So they're the four different modes. And as you know, this one is sort of firmly fixed in that kind of sort of participatory mode, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very much so.
And that's been one of the other questions that came out of today's lesson, was that can documentaries be more than one genre? Yes, they can. So, for example, with Eileen, it's participatory and it's expository. Nobody felt this way or thought this way about Eileen Wuornos before this documentary came out. It was very much of the you see all the press being involved in the film, but the opinion was very much she was a serial killer, guilty, should die. Okay, so yes, it does fit into those two categories.
And it's amazing when you watch the film as well, as you will have, how the pendulum swings, because you do a bit of reading, or you know a little bit about the subject matter, but you watch this Nick Broomfield documentary, and all of a sudden, I know it was in our group, people were very much in favour of kind of Eileen and very sympathetic to Eileen because of the exposure that Nick Broomfield had kind of done, and I think the way that she sort of come across on the film.
And I think that is then accepted by the mainstream kind of ideologies about her, because when you go to see the fiction film Monster, it's very much, you feel sympathy and empathy for her from the beginning of the film. So obviously, those films that she talked about were going to be made, I didn't think she expected them to be made in the way that they have ended up being made. So he has been really influential in that way. I think we pause it before we move on to the next. So
okay.
Bye.